Welcome everyone to this special series of interviews through the Australian Society for Performing Arts Healthcare. I'm delighted to have with me today Dr. Paul Duff, who is a general practitioner.
Nice to be here.
I'm interested to know first what sparked firstly your interest in helping and providing health support for performers.
Well, I've always enjoyed singing. It's been something that's been part of my life ever since I was a child. So it led me to be involved in some minor involvement with choirs, in particular the mass choir for the Sydney Sings Messiah many years ago, which was with the Sydney Symphony Orchestra. And at the time, I knew somebody who was a sessional player with them, who mentioned that they were going on tour. And because I'd had a little bit of experience touring with a children's choir a few years earlier, suggested that maybe I'd be interested in going on tour. So I contacted, found myself surprising them with the offer of coming along gratis. And yes, was welcomed on board. And that was in 1995.
Right. And so as you got involved with that, what were some of the issues that emerged that you became aware of as you went on that initial tour?
Interestingly, particularly because I was dealing with the symphony orchestra, I was seeing people of all ages. So the first things you come across are just day-to-day medical issues: coughs, colds, pains, injuries, chronic health problems that are in the background, diabetes, thyroid issues, and of course psychological and emotional issues which are present throughout, people at every age. So the first thing, if you like, that struck me was how ordinary the medicine was in a lot of ways. As I got more involved, however, I then came to realize that musicians did have some very specific issues. I had no appreciation before I got involved with the orchestra, for example, how extraordinarily physically demanding playing a musical instrument is. And I don't think most people do until you think about the postures and the positions that have to be held and the extraordinary amount of time and energy that goes into moving the instrument and making the sound. The old Dire Straits, money for nothing, couldn't be further from the truth.
So as you were dealing with people and you started to find like they're human beings first, so they have the same conditions as us all, were there particular challenges that emerged from the performer's point of view that perhaps they felt you didn't understand them and there was a sense of listening to each other to find a way forward?
That's a very good question. I suspect there was early on. I mean, I was a complete ignorant of the culture, of the structure of the orchestra, of the many of the issues. It was a good environment in as much as I wasn't pressured for time being on tour with them. I was kept fairly busy, but it wasn't like I had 15 to 20 minutes to deal with this and then move on to the next patient, which is so much a part of standard general practice.
Yes.
So it gave me a wonderful opportunity to be able to sit and listen and spend 40 minutes, an hour and a half if necessary, to just listen to everything. And I was keen at the time to learn everything. I think fairly early on I came to the appreciation that ill health didn't just mean an inconvenience or a bit of time off work isn't that annoying, but often threatened the core of what it was for these people to be who they were. Their music, their performance was everything, and particularly on tour where every audience is completely fresh and there is so much urgency to put your best foot forward at every single show. If somebody was facing a solo, or even if, you know, they were on call and didn't want to be sort of putting pressure on those who'd already played sort of the last 2.5 nights, who might have been due a little bit of a break, that any illness became central to what it meant. It wasn't, illness can for so many people be something, yeah, I'll put that to the side, but when it hits a musician, it can be immediately devastating.
So as you've now done several tours with different groups, are there any particular recurring issues that have emerged, or any traps that you see performers falling into with regard to their health and well-being?
I think there's a bit of a tendency, from the point of view of traps, the classic trap is the show must go on, and putting off and putting off and putting off a health issue until it gets to the point where it's actually beginning to impact on the performance, or where they can't perform at all. Beyond that, there's an enormous emotional drain in putting yourself up front on show, on test, if you like, time and time and time again in front of an audience.
Right.
It's something that most of us don't have to even vaguely contemplate, and yet it's what they do. So, yes, so the emotional drain involved with that is often quite astounding. And I guess parallel to that, the tendency for alcohol to then be incorporated into the wind down process and the culture of performance across the board is an enormous trap. Alcohol, the longer I do medicine, the more I am distraught at how we accept alcohol as a relatively benign thing in our society, when in fact, second to tobacco, it does more damage and more harm than any other substance that we come across. The media vaguely is beginning to get that, but when you compare the interest in ice, or the interest in MDMA, or the interest in party drugs, and the handful of deaths, tragic as they are, associated with them, and you hardly hear a whisper about the dozens, hundreds of people who die every day because of alcohol.
Wow.
Yes. So, yeah. If I had to, over the time, if I had to say there was a big trap that could ruin careers and ruin lives, I'd say it's the potential for alcohol to take a big hold in the life of a performer.
Right. This may be related also to your experience. Of course, you're working often with touring performing artists. Do you see particular challenges that have an impact on health that they may not have anticipated, or an impact on their well-being because they're away from the everyday, the familiar, the routines? Or I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
There are a few different things that are important for general good health. Eating well, sleeping well, maintaining good posture, movement, physical activity. Dare I say it, pooing well.
We can say that here, I think.
It may seem like it's a little thing, but and all of these things can be easily disrupted by being on tour. Sleep is an early casualty. It's the first thing that gets disrupted with a long-haul flight. Eating well, again, hotel food can be great, but on the other hand, the temptations for piling a plate up with croissants and orange juice. You spend lots of time in cramped spaces. The flight over is a big issue. We've very early learned that you had to allow at least one recovery day after a long-haul flight for the orchestra, that they were just almost incapable of being able to perform at anything like their best in that first 24 hours. Um, and and look, it's certainly very easy to find yourself partying and alcohol, and it's exciting.
Yeah.
You know, it's a wonderful experience, but it's very exciting. Yeah, and I think that changes things. And people are away from family, which is emotionally difficult. For some, it can be very, very hard indeed, leaving behind young children, for example, to be on tour. And yeah, all of those things.
Yeah, great. I guess one final question I'd like to ask Paul is, you know, given that experience, you've already given us a few tips around sleep, diet, particularly also finding some new wisdom around alcohol and consumption. And I think there's another long conversation we should be having probably on that specifically. But I wonder if there might be any particular tips that you could pass on to performing artists that you think would be good habits perhaps for them to start to build into their life, so that yeah, they have a healthier practice.
I don't want to come across as a wowser.
No.
It's very easy to do that. It's an exciting world, the world of performing arts and of musicianship and of that sort of expression. And the fun and joy and the celebration of that shouldn't be compromised. But at the same time, there are certain basics that are necessary to remain healthy. You need to sleep reasonably well. You need to eat in moderation. You need to watch weight and not become too big. You need to drink in moderation. Alcohol is a wonderful thing, but it needs, some care needs to be taken with that. You need to look after yourself emotionally. You need to get in touch with your emotional state and feelings, and maintain human contact. Do not bury yourself in your work. Try to be sensitive to illness. While there is a tremendous culture of no pain, no gain, break a leg, you know, if it doesn't hurt you, it makes you stronger. If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. There is great value in asking for help and seeking advice and being very suspicious of illness. If you're ill, get it checked. A small amount of early intervention can save career-ending grief further down the track. Pain should not be ignored. Difficulties with your instrument should not be ignored. And other signs of ill health should not be ignored. Fatigue, weight loss, emotional instability, all of these things, the sooner that you seek help, the better your career will be, the stronger a performer you will be. Ill health is the great enemy of performance.
I think that's the perfect note for us to end our time together. Thanks, Paul, for such rich insights, and I really appreciate your experience and your ongoing commitment to the performing arts. So thanks for this time.
My pleasure, Mark.
Yeah, and for all of you who've joined us, if you've perhaps got some questions that have arisen for you, please send them to the Australian Society for Performing Arts Healthcare. I'm sure when you see this video, we'll have some sort of link that you can respond to and get involved in that conversation. So this interview was, in fact, created by the Australian Society for Performing Arts Healthcare, that's ASPAH, and it was also achieved with the support of Sense Connection. I'm Dr. Mark Seaton. Thanks for watching.